let's get on to the real pressing issues for this ball club.
Right.
And you mentioned, do I think he could make a trade from a regular player? Yeah, I think they might have to. I think they're going to have to do some work on the free agent side, not necessarily at the top end of the market, and they're going to have to probably possibly move some value off their roster to fill some holes. So, yeah, we hear Castellanos and we hear Bohm. To me, Bohm, I'm not really in favor of trading Bohm. I think he's a good player. He drove in like 97 runs, and that was with a month where he drove in just 3, and that was with a terrible September as well.
And he was injured too.
I think he's a good player. I think he's an ascending player. I think he's like getting better, and he showed a lot of frustration down the stretch, and I think that probably got under some people's skin. But I'm not sure that his name is floating out there because they're looking to get rid of him. I think it's probably out there because he's, still 2 years away from free agency. He's a productive player. He's a good player. He's got value. He might be able to bring you something back. So we haven't, I'm not sure why we don't hear maybe about Stott. He's also a young player. I think has value. I wonder though if they're, maybe be more protective of him because who knows about Trey Turner's future at shortstop. He has not looked good there for spells. Maybe he's your insurance at shortstop. I don't know, but they talk about Castellanos. I mean, I would listen on all those guys. I would listen on Stott. I would listen on Bohm because those are 2 young guys with value. So you get something good, but I'd have to get something good for both guys. I mean, Castellanos, they floated his name out there. They had conversations about him last year. There was no interest. Maybe it changes with a more productive 24 and the fact that he's got $20 million more off the books. So he's only owed $40 million over the next 2 seasons. Maybe you eat some of that and to facilitate a move, save some payroll because, they have a big need to me in left field. They, to me, have a need in center field, depending on what they do with Marsh, Rojas, platoon, or maybe it's just a platoon guy. But I think they have a big need to get a bat in left field. And I think they have 2 big needs in the bullpen, and they have needs at the back of the rotation. So it's going to take, they're going to have to spend some free agent dollars to sign, to fill these holes. And they're probably going to have to make a trade. Infield is a spot maybe where you could make a trade from because you do have some, it's probably the strength of your farm system. You got Aiden Miller coming who can play anywhere in the infield. Preston Mattingly last week said they're going to start looking at him a little bit at second base. I mean, what does that tell you? So that they might be open to all sorts of things here. So, I think they could move one of those guys. I just hope they get really, really good value for Alec Bohm because I hope he got a little frustrated at the end of the season. I hope they're not just, throwing him away and giving up on him. And I don't think that is the case. I think they know he's a good player, but moving somebody like Castellanos would maybe free up a little payroll, allow you to do some other things, and to me, you got to get a left fielder too. You got to get a left fielder who can hit, who can not chase and drive in runs and hit for some pop. I mean, this is Citizens Bank Park. You got to hit for pop in this place,
Well, it's part of the problem. You move on from Castellanos, who replaces him. You say what you want about him, Jim, and actually,
he was
good. He was good last year.
Yeah, I don't know. You're down to 2 years. I wouldn't give him away either. But somebody might look at him as a veteran bat who had those 4 really good months. I think those are your most tradable guys. You're not going to trade Schwarber. I mean, obviously Harper and Turner are not going anywhere. I don't think at this stage of his career, JT is going to be a trade guy. I wonder if they'd listen on Ranger. I certainly would.
Took my next question. Last time I was on with you, you floated that because he's a free agent after this year. He's going to make, I think I saw $11 million.
Yeah,
is what his final year of arbitration is projected to be. If you're not going to re-sign him, which it feels like they're not going to overspend to keep him, and the price of starting pitching out there in free agency, Jim, big money. He's going to get. I mean, Nick Pivetta is going to make $60 million on a couple-year contract. Do you think about moving him and then you sign a veteran like a Verlander, for lack of a better, but you sign a veteran on a 1-year contract that you hope can be a 3 or 4 or a 5, and then you go with it? Because Ranger's a good pitcher. I would have interest in Ranger Suarez if I was a team that needed a starter.
I think you have to entertain all those creative options, and I would listen on Ranger. His second half, his conditioning, it gives me pause about whether I want to do something long term with him. I mean, he was on the verge of. We were talking about him as a Cy Young candidate, 8 or 9 weeks into the season, and I'm sure up on the fourth floor at Citizens Bank Park, they were talking about, wow, he's a year away from free agency. We're gonna have to do something with this guy. Well, that second half, that injury, it put those thoughts out the window. So they're going to need to see more of him before they decide to commit, and maybe even they don't. So